We've already lost the Chinese Grand Prix to COVID. Imola was rained off. And now Canada could be cancelled as well. If you haven't seen the news, Canada is at the beginning of its worst ever wildfire season, and the effects are being felt across North America at the moment. Fires across Canada have already burned more than 3.8 million hectares of land, an area 12 times the 10-year average for this time of year. At the moment, it isn't the fires themselves that are the problem though. It is the smoke that is bringing swathes of North America to a halt. Today, we'll look at what is happening in Quebec and what it means for the Canadian Grand Prix. So don't go anywhere. The obvious place to start with this story is the current situation in Quebec and the northern United States. Millions of people in North America have been advised to wear N95 masks outdoors due to poor air quality levels sparked by intense wildfires in Canada. The city of New York has started handing out masks for free, and in Canada, people are advised to wear masks if they can't stay inside. Fire season in Quebec and Canada usually starts in May, slightly after the typical start of the fire activity in the United States. As of Tuesday, there were more than 400 fires actively burning throughout Canada, the country's interagency fire centre said, with 240 of them burning out of control. 120,000 people have been forced from their homes already, and the wildfire season will continue until October. Roughly 150 fires are active in Quebec alone, according to the Canadian Interagency Forest Fire Centre. Many of these fires started days ago, if not weeks. Many of the fires in Quebec were ignited by lightning earlier this month, but above normal temperatures and dry conditions have helped fuel outbreaks across the country since May. Canada was at the epicenter of the most significant heat anomaly on the planet in May, with average temperatures up 7 degrees centigrade over the month. Worldwide, this May was the second hottest on record. Montreal, which will host the Canadian Grand Prix, is roughly 300 miles southeast of where the majority of the fires are. The fires themselves are tragic and terrifying, and there is a conversation to be had about them and climate change. But it isn't the burning that is putting the Canadian Grand Prix at risk. Circuit Gilles Villeneuve sits on an island on the St. Lawrence River in southwest Montreal. It is the smog created by the fires that is putting the Grand Prix at risk. Smoke and haze continue to fill the skies across the northeast of the USA on Thursday, as I write this, as the wildfires burning hundreds of miles away in Canada make the air unhealthy in New York City, Washington, and elsewhere. The level of particulate matter in the air from smoke on Wednesday was considered unhealthy from Detroit to Philadelphia. A storm system swirling off the coast of Nova Scotia in recent days forced the smoke from the fires south into the United States, and then east towards some of the most densely populated areas in the country. The weather pattern is expected to persist for the next several days, with haze likely to continue across the region. In New York, an orange haze blanketed the city's skyline and shrouded landmarks including the Statue of Liberty. We recommend all New Yorkers limit outdoor activity to the greatest extent possible, Mayor Eric Adams warned on Wednesday. Zoos have brought animals inside, and in New York, carriage horse rides have been suspended. On Wednesday, schools in Washington, D.C. area also cancelled outdoor activities as air quality levels were labelled code red, while Detroit was listed as the 5th worst major metropolitan area in the world on IQ Air's air pollution rankings. Public health officials have cautioned people not to exercise outside and to minimize their exposure to the smoke as much as possible, as the air poses immediate and long-term health risks. While the worst of the smoke is avoiding Montreal at the moment, passing just to the west before moving south and then east, changes in the weather conditions over the next week could easily mean the city is bathed in the same deep orange smog that is blanketing New York at the moment. Thousands of flights have been cancelled in the last few days. In baseball, the New York Yankees and the Philadelphia Phillies both postponed home games scheduled for Wednesday. A National Women's Soccer League match in Harrison, New Jersey was also rescheduled, as was a WNBA women's basketball game in Brooklyn. US National Weather Service meteorologist Brian Ramsey said the smog over the north of the US will probably be hanging around at least for the next few days. He added, "Since the fires are raging, they're really large, they're probably going to continue for weeks. But it's really just going to be all about the wind shift." F1 faces yet another tough decision as it has to decide the fate of the Canadian GP. If the situation worsens, Formula 1 will once again put the safety of the people first by cancelling the race. While Montreal is relatively clear at the moment, this situation is developing from hour to hour, and with the Grand Prix 10 days away still, the air quality could change to be hazardous to human life by the time the weekend begins. 338,000 fans attended the Canadian Grand Prix last year. There can also be as many as 100 travelling staff for each team to a Grand Prix race, as well as all of the stewards, marshals and event staff. If the air is unsafe for those people to breathe, then there's no way that the event can go ahead. It isn't as simple as telling fans not to turn up, though that is always a minefield, as we saw when the Australian Grand Prix was cancelled due to COVID-19 in 2020. Even if the fans didn't arrive and the staff all had masks that were capable of stopping any damage, the drivers in the cars would still be at risk. Racing a Formula 1 car requires incredible physical exertion, and you can't just put a mask under a Formula 1 helmet. There isn't any space. Also, a Formula 1 car is an incredible piece of engineering, and the engines require a lot of air. If that air is filled with smoke particles, that's going to affect the engine, potentially to the point that the cars can't run. There's also a chance that the flights in and out of Montreal could be cancelled, which could affect staff trying to get to the race. But it is the health risk to humans that is more worrying though. Experts say exposure to wildfire smoke can cause a litany of health issues. Matthew Adams, a professor at the University of Toronto and the director of its Centre of Urban Environments, said the immediate effects of inhaling wildfire smoke include shortness of breath, an elevated pulse, chest pain and inflammation in the eyes, nose and throat. On these elevated air pollution days, we'll see an increased number of visits to hospital, Professor Adams told the BBC. And the people that are visiting the hospital typically have a pre-existing respiratory disease. But wildfire smoke has also been linked to serious, long-term health issues like cancer or lung disease, Professor Adams said, specifically for people who live in areas that experience frequent forest fires. This is caused by small particles in the smoke haze, he said, which can enter the bloodstream and other parts of the human body, causing possible DNA mutations and other health issues. Some studies have also shown that prolonged wildfire smoke exposure can affect pregnant women and their unborn children. For people living in cities far away from the fires but under current air advisories, Professor Adams advised people to limit outdoor exercise to avoid breathing in the wildfire smoke. But in areas closer to the fires, such as Montreal, Professor Adams recommended wearing a N95 mask outside to block inhalation of most of the smoke particles. If the race is cancelled, it'll be the third one this season, and as with China and Imola, the odds of it being rescheduled are pretty slim unfortunately. The most obvious gap in the calendar would be between the Qatar Grand Prix on the 8th of October and the race at COTA in Texas on the 22nd of October. Montreal and Texas are almost 2,000 miles apart by road, but at least they're on the same continent. Formula 1 said that due to the logistical issues of rearranging a race and the tightness of the calendar, Imola couldn't be reorganised. Formula 1 spends months in Europe during the season, and they couldn't find the space to fit in a rearranged Grand Prix there. It seems unlikely they'll squeeze in the Canadian Grand Prix anywhere. The situation in Canada is evolving quickly, and we'll make sure to keep you updated as the race approaches. If the weather over the North American continent changes in any way, Montreal could look just like New York does at the moment, and that will mean the cancellation of the Grand Prix. What do you think of the state of North America at the moment? Should we be worried, or will this quite literally blow over? Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below, and until next time, drive safe and bye for now.